I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night. The drive home was about 2 hours, and I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Now most of this drive consisted of roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see in a lot of movies. Anyway, I'd been driving for about 45 minutes, and I was starting to feel really tired. I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep driving like this, so I decided to keep an eye out, hoping that I could come across a rest area or any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep for a couple of hours. 20 minutes passed, and it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find any place to pull up to, and I was practically falling asleep at the wheel. I didn't have a lot of options, so I decided to do something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road, onto the grass, and parked behind some bushes, trying to hide my car from anybody else who was going to drive past. I sat in my car for a few minutes, letting the heater run at full blast, just watching the occasional car drive by through the bushes. I then turned off the car and, in an attempt to make myself comfortable, shifted my body in the driver's seat so I faced the passenger side. While doing so, I heard a loud crunch come from behind my car. The sound made me jump, and I turned over and looked in my rearview mirror expecting a person, but found nothing except an empty forest. I just assumed it was an animal of some sort, shifted over in my seat once again, and made a mental note of what time it was, 11:22, and fell asleep soon after. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, and it read 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around, and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound. I looked at the clock again, and it was now 12:40. Now I was rested and more aware of what was happening, and soon began to panic, because this time, the sound didn't stop. I once again thought that this was just an animal, but why would it return almost an hour after it left the previous time? I shifted over in my seat and looked in my rearview mirror again, except this time, I just managed to catch a glimpse of a person's silhouette running away into the forest. Now all I could think was that someone was trying to break into my car for some malicious reason. I turned on my car, still looking in my rearview mirror, hoping that the lights wouldn't illuminate someone standing in the dark. Thankfully they didn't, and I drove forward out of the bushes and back onto the road. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, I saw a car parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door wide open. I slowed down just to look and see if anybody was in there, but no one was. I quickly realized that someone most likely saw my car parked in the bushes when they were driving past and decided to park ahead so I wouldn't see their car if I woke up to whatever they were planning. I looked in my rearview mirror towards the bushes that I was just parked at, hoping that I could catch another glimpse of whoever this was. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden heard a blood-curdling scream come from my right and saw someone come sprinting out of the dark forest towards my car. I immediately floored it and looked in my rearview mirror. After a few seconds, I watched a man, still screaming, chase after my car like a maniac. I just kept my foot on the pedal and continued to watch the screaming man shrink as the distance increased. I guess the point of this story is, don't sleep on the side of a deserted road. One day when I was younger, my mother and I visited my aunt's apartment. It's a giant-looking house with a side driveway that leads around the back to a small parking lot for tenants, with the house entrances being off to the side, facing away and hidden from the busy street. I don't remember how old me and my cousin were, but to the best of my memory, we were both somewhere around the age of 8 or 12, with her being slightly older than I. It was midday, and we were all hungry, so my mother and aunt decided to go shopping, and were then going to pick up a pizza on the way back for all of us to eat. Me and my cousin were ecstatic, as we love pizza. So our parents left, and me and my cousin stayed and watched TV with the volume really low while browsing on her laptop. It had probably been around 25 minutes after our parents left when we start to see the front door lock shaking. We thought our parents were back, but then we noticed something suspicious. Instead of the locks of the door quickly turning as if a key were inserted, we instead saw that the locks were very slowly turning to unlock. We suddenly both realized that this wasn't our parents, and instead, an intruder. We both stare at the front door silently, freaked out and frozen. I always thought those horror movies where the actors stand frozen in fear like idiots were fake, but it was this moment that proved that idea wrong. As we both stood there frozen in horror, we saw the top lock finally turn all the way after what felt like half a minute. Then we start to see the bottom lock slowly start to turn. The door was probably half a second from being unlocked completely, when suddenly my cousin broke free from being frozen in fear and sprints to the door and turns both the locks to prevent the door from being opened. We didn't dare look out that second-story window to see who was trying to get in. Instead, my cousin held the lock for a couple more minutes and then decided to sit down on the couch next to me. We were horrified and stayed quiet, waiting in the living room. We didn't say a word to each other and just sat there on the couch. It was about 15 minutes later until our parents got home. We told them the whole ordeal, and they were shocked. We don't know what would have happened if my cousin didn't sprint to lock the door, but to this day, I can remember very vividly seeing the door lock shaking rapidly and slowly turning. This was a terrifying experience. This happened a couple years back. Some buddies and I went camping and decided to set up a makeshift campsite near a lake in the woods. It was about 1:30 a.m. All of us were awake just screwing around and joking near the fire until we heard some rustling in the big bushes nearby. We just figured it was a rabbit or something, but it seemed to continue for a minute or so. This caught mine and a friend's attention, so we got up and went over to check it out. As we were halfway to the noise, it seemed to stop, and when we got to the bushes, we found nothing. We just shrugged it off and continued to enjoy ourselves, but about 5 minutes later, a huge pickup truck that was lifted and blaring loud music drove by really slowly, shining a huge police-grade spotlight on me and my friends. The truck burned out and kept driving. This put us on edge. We were all really curious about what was happening, so my best friend and I decided to drive up the road and see if we could spot anything unusual going on. We get to the main road, and there were probably around 7 or 8 cop cars on the road, lights flashing, and 2 or 3 ambulances. We stopped the car, attempting to turn around, and I swear like a damn horror movie, a cop pecked out my window with his flashlight out of nowhere. He asked what we were doing. We told him we were camping, and told him about the truck we saw. He says, "Well, you boys might want to camp somewhere else. We had a triple homicide here, and we haven't located the suspect." My friend, being the idiot that he was, said, "So should we be scared?" The cop looked at him and quickly replied in a serious tone, "Well, I'm not scared, but there's 20 officers here, and we're all armed." I took this as him warning us and said, "Yes sir, we'll leave immediately. Thank you," and tore back down to the campsite. My best friend immediately called the rest of our buddies, telling them to pack up the gear, not to ask any questions, and that we had to leave immediately. We literally threw 2 fully pitched tents into the back of one of our trucks and got the hell out of there. We found out later that the cops located the killer about 30 minutes after we'd left, right on our campsite. Turns out the rustling we'd heard in the bushes while camping was this psycho who had just committed a triple homicide sitting there watching us. I personally think that he was waiting for us to fall asleep. A couple of weeks ago, I was hanging out with some friends at a local smoke spot. We spent a couple of hours just messing around and having fun, but I began to get tired at around 1 a.m., so I decided to head home. It's about a 30-minute board ride back to my house, but there's a shortcut I usually take, down this long secluded bike trail that usually cuts at least 5 minutes out of the trip, since I'm mostly riding downhill on a board. Usually nobody's ever around this area, especially not this late at night, as there's no lighting on the trail. I usually have to use my phone light just to see where I'm going. Well, a couple of minutes into the ride, I noticed an odd flicker that looked like a flashlight down a little bit ahead of me. The light then flashes over to me, and then immediately went out. Maybe it was just some kids smoking on the trail or something, and got spooked when they saw somebody coming towards them. Not a big deal. I continue riding down until I get to where I'd be within eye distance of where I saw the flashlight, and I didn't see anybody up or around the trail. I thought it was possible that the person just continued walking forward, but I have pretty good eyesight, and I didn't see anything that even looked like a shadow ahead of me, so it seemed like whoever was there either disappeared or was hiding. Being the paranoid person I am, I got off my board and held it in my hand as some kind of makeshift weapon, just in case this person wanted to mug me or something. I turned my phone light off and began to move forward with my board still in hand. Next to the trail were some bushes and trees. I thought I noticed a lone shadowy figure literally standing behind a bush in between two trees, looking somewhat hidden. Seeing this shadowy figure sent shivers down my spine and only reaffirmed my suspicions that something shady was going on. I shone the light of my phone in that direction and saw a middle-aged man indeed standing there behind this bush, just staring at me with a very creepy blank expression on his face. There was something sinister about it that made me really uncomfortable. I slowly began walking forward, my legs practically moving on their own. I tried to keep my body from shaking as I walked past him. I half expected him to jump out and attack me or something, but all he did was silently continue staring at me, even slowly turning his head to follow me as I moved. When I got a short distance ahead of him, I began to hear footsteps other than my own. I decided to shine my light behind me and saw that he was now following me at a pretty brisk pace. I couldn't take this anymore. I jumped back onto my board and began to ride away faster than I ever have before. I looked back one last time before I got too far away. As soon as the light of my phone hit him, he stopped dead in his tracks in the middle of the trail and just stared at me with that same creepy expression. I got home shortly after that and damn near had a mental breakdown. I've used the trail a couple more times after this incident, and I haven't seen this man again.